At dawn on June 18, 1815, Napoleon Bonaparte stood on a muddy Belgian hillside and believed, truly believed, that Europe was about to kneel again. Not someday, not eventually, but today. The enemy was divided. His army was experienced. The plan was elegant. And yet, by nightfall, his empire would be dead. Not because of a grand betrayal, not because of inferior soldiers, but because of a delay measured in hours. This is the story of the 24 hours when Napoleon almost won everything, and how a single hesitation rewired the future of Europe. Act 1. The man who refused to be defeated. By 1814, Napoleon Bonaparte was finished. At least, that's what Europe believed. After 2 decades of near-constant war, the man who had crowned himself Emperor of the French was defeated, forced to abdicate, and exiled to the tiny Mediterranean island of Elba. The coalition powers, Britain, Prussia, Austria, Russia, celebrated. The nightmare was over. The tyrant was contained. Except Napoleon had escaped before, and in February 1815, he escaped again. He returned to France not with an army, but with a legend. Royal troops sent to arrest him instead joined him. Cities opened their gates. Veterans rallied. Within weeks, Napoleon was emperor once more. Europe panicked. The coalition knew one thing with absolute certainty. If Napoleon was given time, he would rebuild, and history would repeat itself. So they moved fast. Act 2. Europe's gamble. The Allies assembled the Seventh Coalition, fielding nearly 1 million soldiers across Europe. But they were scattered. Napoleon's only chance was speed. He would strike before the coalition could fully unite, smash their armies individually, force political collapse, and dictate peace on his terms. His target? Belgium. There, 2 major forces waited: the British-led army under the Duke of Wellington, the Prussian army under Field Marshal Gebhard Blücher. If Napoleon could defeat one before the other arrived, Europe's resolve might shatter. The plan was classic Napoleon: divide, destroy, dominate. And for a moment, it worked. Act 3. Victory slipping into reach. On June 16th, Napoleon struck first. At Ligny, he crushed the Prussians in a brutal battle, forcing Blücher to retreat. At Quatre Bras, his marshals engaged Wellington, preventing British forces from aiding the Prussians. It wasn't a total victory, but it was enough. The Prussians were retreating. Wellington was pulling back. Napoleon believed he had done it. He issued orders to pursue the Prussians aggressively, ensuring they could not regroup or return. This order went to Marshal Grouchy, and this is where the clock begins ticking. Act 4. The delay. Marshal Grouchy was loyal, competent, but cautious. Instead of aggressively pressing the Prussians, he followed them methodically, staying close to Napoleon's orders rather than adapting to the battlefield. As the Prussians retreated, Grouchy failed to realize something critical. They weren't fleeing east away from the war. They were moving north toward Wellington. Meanwhile, Napoleon turned his attention to the British. He believed Grouchy would keep the Prussians occupied. He was wrong. Act 5. The Field of Waterloo. On the night of June 17th, rain fell hard. By morning, the battlefield near the village of Waterloo was a swamp. Napoleon surveyed the terrain and made a fateful decision. He would delay the attack. The cannons needed firm ground. Mud would slow infantry charges. Waiting a few hours seemed reasonable. So he waited. The battle would begin late morning, around 11:30 a.m. Those lost hours mattered more than anyone realized, because while Napoleon waited, the Prussians were marching. Act 6. Wellington holds the line. Wellington knew his role. He wasn't there to win. He was there to survive. British, Dutch, Belgian, and German troops dug in behind ridges, farms, and sunken roads. Napoleon attacked again and again. Massive artillery barrages, infantry assaults on fortified farms, cavalry charges that shook the ground. French forces nearly broke the center. British lines bent but did not collapse. Wellington famously said, "It was the nearest run thing you ever saw in your life." Every hour that passed favored the Allies. Napoleon didn't know it yet, but time had turned against him. Act 7. a sound from the east. By late afternoon, French scouts began reporting movement, columns, marching troops. Napoleon assumed it was Grouchy. It wasn't. It was the Prussians. Blücher, wounded days earlier, had forced his army to march through mud, exhaustion, and chaos to reach the battlefield. Had Napoleon attacked earlier, had Grouchy been more aggressive, had even one assumption been different, the Prussians might not have arrived in time. But they did. Act 8. The Empire breaks. As Prussian forces slammed into Napoleon's right flank, the battlefield transformed from a controlled assault into a desperate struggle. Napoleon committed his last reserve, the Imperial Guard. They had never been defeated. If they broke Wellington's center, victory was still possible. They advanced. They were met with disciplined volleys of musket fire. The Guard faltered, then retreated. Across the field, a rumor spread like wildfire. The Guard is retreating. French morale collapsed. What had been a fighting withdrawal turned into a rout. Napoleon watched his army disintegrate. The day was lost. The empire was finished. Act 10. The cost of hours. The Battle of Waterloo did not destroy Napoleon because of cowardice or incompetence. It destroyed him because time betrayed him. A delayed attack, a cautious marshal, an underestimated enemy. In 24 hours, Europe's fate flipped. Napoleon abdicated days later. This time, there would be no return. He was exiled to St. Helena, a remote island in the South Atlantic. There, he would die 6 years later, watching history move on without him. Act 10. Legacy of a near victory. Waterloo ended the Napoleonic Wars, but it also shaped the modern world. It preserved monarchies, stabilized European borders, delayed nationalism and revolution temporarily, and cemented Napoleon's legend, not just as a conqueror, but as a man undone by minutes, not miles. History often remembers victories and defeats as inevitable, but Waterloo reminds us empires don't always fall with thunder. Sometimes they fall with a pause. Ending reflection. Napoleon almost won everything, not through genius alone, but through momentum. And when that momentum slowed, even briefly, the world caught up. History doesn't hinge on destiny. It hinges on decisions, and sometimes on a single morning that starts too late. If you like my content, please subscribe.